Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. This is going to be episode 61. I'm going to be reviewing two movies tonight. Soul, the new Pixar film that's now currently streaming on Disney Plus, and One Night in Miami, the directorial debut of actress Regina King, that is streaming on Amazon Prime. So obviously, with the COVID pandemic going on, these films that are streaming, we're getting more and more theatrical releases that are being moved to streaming platforms, which of course is a double-edged sword for me. I enjoy seeing movies in theaters, but it does afford me the unique opportunity to uh, take a look at more films that I would normally be able to see. So obviously, this is 11 o'clock Eastern time, so this is a late live stream. So as I stated in episode 60, if you listen to it or watch the video, I'm going to try to engage more with my audience for the podcast through live videos. So obviously, this being late, one of the reasons the videos are going to be mostly late at night is obviously I have two small children, get them to bed, get kind of situated myself where I have time to sit down and record, which is kind of the same time I record a lot of my podcast. But obviously, if anybody's a night owl, they can pop on here now on Facebook Live. I eventually are looking to, as I grow the podcast and engage the audience, try to stream on multiple platforms. I'm researching that right now so I can, broadcast on Facebook Live, my YouTube channel, which I'm trying to grow as well, and then hopefully Twitter. So wherever you choose to watch the live video or the video after it's recorded, either way is fine. Hopefully, at some point, even if I get a couple of people engaging on each live video, that's fine. If I don't get any, that's not a problem. I'll still treat this like the audio podcast anyway, and use it. So, like I said, this particular video, if you don't watch it live now, you'll be able to watch the video either later on Facebook or on YouTube. I'll get it up there as well. And then the audio will be uploaded to the podcast feed so you can continue to listen to the podcast as you do now. Like I said, that's not going to change at all. I'm just looking to add another element to the podcast. I know a lot of people do consume content via either live streaming or video. And since I've been doing a movie heavy podcast lately, I know my podcast talks about movie, sports, and politics. My last episode was sports, which I hadn't done in a while. And this one is going to be movies again. And like I said, I'll get back into politics at some point. Obviously, the way the political situation has been the last few months, I've taken kind of a welcome break from it, and I'm sure listeners are happy for a welcome break for a little while. But we'll definitely be getting back to it. I definitely have some thoughts on some things politically, but we'll get to that at some point. But again, I'm using this element. I've been trying to figure out a way to incorporate the live video element into it. So instead of trying to uh, wait any longer, I'm gonna try to make it work around what my schedule is. So like I said, a lot of these are going to be late night lives. Sometimes I may be able to record in the afternoon, but that's probably going to be rare. So like I said, in my thoughts, if somebody's a night owl and they want to come on, comment on a movie I'm reviewing, or have a talk, or comment on anything here, that's fine. Like I said, if not, we'll this will still be the podcast as it's in its current form, and this is just another element. So if anybody is out there watching, I'm saying hi to everybody right now. So if you're checking it out, let me know what you think, and we'll go from there. So the podcast obviously is Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. The handle on Twitter is at Bend Your Ear Pod. The handle is also at Bend Your Ear Pod at Instagram. And if you want to email the show, it's bendyourearpodcast at gmail.com. Then, of course, the Facebook page, if you could like it, if you listen to this video, I'm on my regular Facebook. Once I build up more people on my Let Me Bend Your Ear page, I'll do the live videos from that page. But if you can like it, if you're watching this video now, it's Let Me Bend Your Ear. And then the YouTube channel is Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. So you could like it, if you could like both of those, that'll be great. Or subscribe on YouTube. Like I said, this video will be uploaded to YouTube. Obviously, I'm not live on YouTube right now. I'm just live on Facebook. Like I said, hopefully, eventually, in the coming months, I'll be able to live stream on multiple platforms. So you can, if you choose Facebook, if you choose Twitter, or even Instagram, wherever you watch your live videos, hopefully I'll make it available so it's going to be easy for you to find it whenever you want at the choice on the platform that you choose. All right, so let's get right down to it. So I'm going to review the new Pixar film Soul. So this was one of the movies that was supposed to be released in theaters by Pixar. So there were two movies that came out this year for Pixar. The first one was Onward, which came out earlier this year. I did not review it for the podcast. I did watch the movie. I would recommend it. Onward's very good. It was actually better than I thought it was going to be. I actually enjoyed it. The story of two brothers that lose their father and kind of their relationship. And like Pixar does, they do a great job with kind of emotional storytelling and making it funny and making it kind of good for both adults and children. So I do recommend Onward. I have, like I said, didn't review it for the podcast, but I do recommend it. But we're going to talk about Soul. Soul was also supposed to come out in theaters in 2020, and it was released directly to Disney Plus. So I was able to watch it about a week and a half ago. So the film has the voice talents of Jamie Foxx, Tina Fey, Graham Norton, Rachel House, Alice Braga, and Felicia Rashad, among others. So the film is directed by Pete Docter, who also directed the Pixar film Inside Out, which I have not seen, and I know it was critically acclaimed. It's as one of the better Pixar films. That's a blind spot for me, so I'm gonna definitely have to check that out. I may review it for the podcast, but I've heard the movie's fantastic. I've seen clips of it, but I haven't seen it. So Pete Docter directed this film and actually co-wrote the film with, and actually co-wrote it and co-directed it with Kim Powers, which was an interesting thing that I found out by accident. So when I review the next film, One Night in Miami, that film is actually based on a play written by Kent Powers. So he actually has something to do creatively with both movies I'm reviewing this evening, which I thought was interesting. So we'll get to that review a little later. So Soul tells the story of a jazz pianist who is a high school teacher, music teacher. So he has, it's kind of the story that you have where you have someone that grew up loving music and wanted to be a pianist, to be an artist, and obviously, as you know, navigating the field of musician or actor or anything in the entertainment field is pretty treacherous in the sense that there's a lot of rejection, and most people don't make it because of the odds of getting to the top in that profession, or even not even to the top, getting to a point where you can make a living on it is pretty hard to do and pretty rare. So the movie opens with Joe kind of, unhappy with his lot in life. He teaches, he loves music, but he's always wanted to be a musician. You see at the beginning of the movie, they set up his character, the push and pull with his family. His mother owns a alteration clothing shop that and her mother and his mother is trying to discourage him from chasing this musical dream. He's not a young man anymore. She wants him to be stable, and that classic. I understand you love music and music is great, but music doesn't pay the bills. So Joe's mother is voiced by the great Felicia Rashad, so she's great in that role. So by happenstance and by some good fortune, one of his former students reaches out to him and lets him know that the quartet that he plays for, a famous jazz quartet, is looking for a pianist at the last minute, and it looks like he would have a chance to maybe tour and perform with this group. So of course he jumps at the chance of that, but he tries to do it in secret because obviously he doesn't want his mom to find out that he's still chasing this dream. But he's super excited. There's a funny sequence going in the beginning of the film where he's so excited and jazzed up. He's running around New York, barely avoiding mishaps that could get him killed. About 3 or 4 different things that he just avoids by sheer luck. And if you've seen the trailer, I'm not spoiling anything here. So obviously, early in the film, something happens to Joe, and Joe ends up spirited away from the mortal world, if you will. He's gets into an accident that renders him unconscious, and his spirit or his soul goes to this place. It's not really, they kind of describe it, but it's that part of it's not important. What's important is he's kind of stuck in between Earth and wherever you end up going after you die. So that's the bulk of the film, and what happens is he runs into someone up there named 22, voiced by Tina Fey, who's a soul that's kind of trying to find her way. So the cool part of this part of the film is they kind of show, they create this world about how people come to being before they're born. So there's different areas of this place where you get your temperament, your personality, who you're going to be, and then these things come to Earth. So Joe obviously wants to get back to Earth in the worst way, because on the day that he was about to maybe have his life change for the dream that he's always wanted, he obviously this accident happens to him, and he spends a lot of the early part of it trying to get back to Earth, get back to Earth. So he finds a way to do it with the help of 22, and unfortunately, it doesn't go the way he plans. He ends up in the body of a cat, and 22 ends up in Joe's body. So obviously, there's some comical things that happen with that, and obviously the complications of trying to have 22 navigate his body while trying to make the audition, and going through all these things are kind of what most of the film is about. And so my thoughts on the film: I think it's a very good movie. I think the second half of the movie is better than the first half of the movie. So not that the first half is bad, but I think it takes a little bit to get going. And when it does, but when it does get going, it's really good. And then the second half of the movie to me is really strong, and that's where I would highly recommend it. It's worth it to go through to the end of the movie, like Pixar does so well, and they always do. They find a emotional tie to the characters, to the audience, to make you enjoy the film. So one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Joe discovers kind of the connection that he has to music. And I don't want to give too much away, but there's a montage of all the moments in his life that music has played a part in it, and as it goes through, you start to see that music does play a huge part in his life, but there was another element to it that anchors him, and that he realizes what really was important to him, and why that thing that was important to him manifested itself through music, which is pretty beautiful how they do it, and pretty moving. So I enjoyed that part of it. And the performances are good. Jamie Foxx is fantastic. Tina Fey is always funny, really good. The animation, of course, is beautiful. The instrumentation, the music is fantastic. So obviously you get great jazz music in there. Like I said, it's a top notch Pixar movie. You know, the question always gets asked: how does it rank with the all time greats of Pixar? And since they've set such a high standard, even something that's, you know, look, the saying is, even a okay Pixar movie is better than most other animated movies, and that's definitely true. I think this is better than average. I think it's up there. Would I put it up there with the Toy Story threes, or you know, Wall-E, or Up, or those moving films? I don't know if I put it that high, but I put it pretty high. And like I said, the combination of Onward and this movie, what I do appreciate about these two films is they're kind of different Pixar movies, and obviously much has been made about the character lead being an African American, and it is significant that they're telling that story, a story that they haven't really told that much before. Obviously, they've delved into other ethnicities with Moana, and women with Brave, and you know, they've done it. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see one about the African American experience, and through jazz, which of course is the African American led art form in the form of music in America. So it's a cool way to do it. Like I said, the music is wonderful. The story is well told. Like I said, is it up there with them all-time classics of Pixar? I don't know if I put it that high, but I liked the movie a lot. Liked it a lot. So definitely, I would recommend you checking it out. It's on Disney Plus right now, streaming. Again, that's Soul, directed by Pete Docter, and co-directed by Kemp. So out of 5 Van Goghs, I'm going to go ahead and give Soul 4 Van Goghs out of 5. Now, the next movie I'm going to talk about is One Night in Miami. Now, if you're not familiar with this film was directed by Regina King. Now, if that name is familiar to you, she is an actress who's been an actress since she was a child. I watched her when she was a little girl on this NBC series 227. So she's been around since the mid 80s acting, and this is her directorial debut of a film. She's directed a lot of television, but she's never directed a film before. So this movie had an interesting premise. When I read about it, I was very excited to take a look at it. So basically, it's set in 1962, I believe, 62 was the in the aftermath of the Muhammad Ali Sonny Liston fight, which occurred in Miami. So this is a fictional movie that was based on true events, the way I understand it. So I think the actual story is in Miami on the night of that fight. There were four icons of African American culture at the time. So you had, of course, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, the singer Sam Cooke, and the football player Jim Brown. So the movie tells the story of the four of them meeting up in Miami after, or one to see the fight, and then hanging out in Miami in the aftermath of the fight. So let me start with the beginning of the film. So I love the setup of the four characters. So the movie opens with each character kind of getting their turn to kind of get set up in what's going on in their lives. So the way the movie is framed, at least for me when I watched it, it it appeared that all four of them converging at this point in time that the movie is set in finds each character kind of at a crossroads in their life. So let's start with Muhammad Ali. So obviously, at this point in his life, he's not known as Muhammad Ali. He's still going as his original name, Cassius Clay. So as he sets up for this fight with Sonny Liston was a huge deal. Sonny Liston was a tough champion, brutal fighter, very intense, and Muhammad Ali was the loudmouth, braggadocious, talented fighter that we all know. So not giving away anything. Obviously, he wins that fight, becomes the world champion, and in the background, he has a friendship with Malcolm X, as you know, is basically the leader of the Muslim temple, Black Muslim temple in New York, and is I don't know, second in command, but very close to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was the leader of that church at the time. So two things are happening, and this is where two characters' stories intersect. So, from Muhammad Ali's perspective, or Cassius Clay's perspective, he's listening to Malcolm X. He is a aware person. He's making the decision. This is at the time he's contemplating whether to publicly decide that he's going to become a Muslim. So that obviously is an important time in his life. Obviously, the ramifications of doing that and aligning himself with Malcolm X obviously can harm him professionally and in some instances personally. So he's wrestling with that decision. He's committed to the religion, but obviously he's smart enough to understand the ramifications of publicly aligning himself with the Muslim movement, and more specifically with Malcolm X. Because obviously this is Malcolm X's, at this point in the movie, Malcolm X hasn't made his pilgrimage to Mecca yet. So he was still kind of delivering those firebrand speeches, the incendiary rhetoric that was scaring a lot of white America as far as what his views were on fighting for African Americans. So that's going on now in Malcolm X's life at this time. He's very conflicted as well, because he's starting to realize that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has some personal issues that don't conform to the faith that he's given his life to. And this is at the time where he's thinking about breaking away from the church to start his own branch of Muslims, and that follow the teachings more closely than he feels that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has done. So he's having that battle within himself if he's going to be able to do that and get support. And he sees Cassius Clay as someone that can help him do that. You see in the movie, he has great conversations with Betty Shabazz about are they going to be able to get him to come over. And I think even Malcolm X is conflicted about making sure that he still respects the friendship with Cassius Clay, that he legitimately wants Cassius Clay to want to come over. But of course, if he can come over as a high profile African American athlete, that would help his transition away from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad go a lot more smoothly and make it maybe more successful. But you can see that he's conflicted about that. And I'm going to get back to the actor that plays Malcolm X in a moment, because I think his performance in the movie is phenomenal. I'm going to get into that because everyone knows the definitive performance of Malcolm X is Denzel Washington in Spike Lee's Malcolm X, and I think it still is. But the actor that portrays Malcolm X in this film does a fantastic job. And I'll get back to him in a minute. So, in Jim Brown's life, there's a great scene early in the movie where he goes back home to Alabama and visits a white, uh, affluent person that knew him growing up, knew Jim Brown's family, because Jim Brown's family obviously came from a history of sharecroppers. Of course, he became the greatest running back in history with the Cleveland Browns. He's still considered that up to this day. But Bo Bridges plays that white Southerner, and they're having this conversation, uh, where Bo Bridges is telling Jim Brown, look, I know you've gone through a lot of stuff, and I always have your back. You know that our families grew up together. You've been a phenomenal person, and the scene plays out beautifully, because you have this you have this feeling that, wow, okay, somebody recognizes him for who he is, even though he says he's talented. He says you're a good dude, and then the his daughter comes out and says, hey, look, I need you to help me move a piece of furniture. So he goes in. Jim Brown follows behind him, and he goes, hey, I can give you a hand with that. And Bo Bridges turns around, looks him dead in the eye with not even blinking, and says, oh, hey, you're nice, I appreciate that, but we don't allow N words in this house. So basically throws the worst racial slur at him after they just have this beautiful conversation. And and it shouldn't have, but it kind of threw me in a good way, though, because it was a really great scene to show how ingrained racism was back then, and how people would engage in someone like Jim Brown because of his fantastic athletic ability, and would glom on to that athletic ability. But at the end of the day, they're still a black person in the South in the 60s, and they're basically less than. So great. It was a great scene, and kind of, Jim Brown was someone that, obviously was an activist, and at the time, even in the 60s, was an activist too. And he was at a crossroads as well. His crossroads was his entry into the movies. Obviously he became an actor, and this was coming at the tail end of his career. And the last gentleman that's profiled in the movie is the singer Sam Cooke. Now, Sam Cooke, I have to admit, I know who he is, and I know some of his songs. I'm not a huge, I don't know a lot about Sam Cooke, and so seeing this movie was a lot of enlightenment for me, because I didn't know a lot about him. I know who he was, and beautiful voice and a beautiful singer. He just was not one of those soul singers that I've listened to a lot of his particular music. I've listened to Smokey Robinson, the Temptations, the Four Tops, kind of the Motown groups that came out, or even some of the doo-wop groups that came out before then. But I didn't know a lot about Sam Cooke. So Sam Cooke was riding a wave of success at this time as well. And one of the central conflicts in One Night in Miami is the the push of Malcolm X to Sam Cooke to stop making kind of the pop records, the poppy, derivative stuff, basically, in Malcolm X's term, that basically just makes white people happy, and he should be pushing to write more socially conscious songs and use his platform as a successful black singer to help bring about positive change in that community. So a lot of the tension in that movie, especially in the middle part of What I Miami, is that push and pull between Malcolm X and Sam Cooke, and kind of the conflict within Sam Cooke as well. There's a great scene in the movie too, another great scene where the Malcolm X plays him a Bob Dylan record, and and Sam Cooke is moved by the lyrics of the Bob Dylan song, and how someone could make that type of song still be a beautiful song but still have a message. So that kind of stuck with him. And as the movie points out, and like I said, I'm spoiling, he had one of the great songs, "Change Is Gonna Come," which is a classic, considered protest song that he wrote and performed beautifully with his beautiful voice. So, like I said, all four characters are kind of in a pretty important stage of their life when the movie is set. So let me go back to the actor that portrayed Malcolm X, and I'm going to pull his name up real quick. Bear with me here, because I didn't hear this actor before this movie, but I want to kind of single him out. I know other critics have singled him out as well. And after I saw the movie, I can see why. As I stated a little bit earlier, the definitive performance of Malcolm X in film has been in the Spike Lee biopic of Malcolm X, and it's a phenomenal performance and arguably Denzel Washington's greatest performance, which is saying a lot for all the great performances he's given. But the actor that plays Malcolm X in this movie is Kingsley Ben Adir. Now, I don't know him from anything else. I believe he's from England, but his performance as Malcolm X in this film is fantastic. And I think what I loved about it, and that's why I think it's a good counterpoint to Denzel Washington. So obviously the Spike Lee biopic was a beginning to end, or as close to beginning to end biopic as you can get of Malcolm X. So obviously, it starts with his youth and his criminal activity, and then it goes to his adulthood when he becomes a Muslim in prison, and then when he's released and he becomes the head of the church in New York and becomes a confidant and second, almost second in command to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And Malcolm X's fiery speeches and his charisma and his belief in the cause makes him a celebrity. And he's got fiery rhetoric about whites and what they've done to black people throughout history, and how the peaceful ways of Martin Luther King are not enough to get the job done. Of course, he has to frame his phrase by any means necessary. And then the last part of the film of Malcolm X by Spike Lee, because the thing that I loved, I read the autobiography of Spike Lee when I was in high school, or of Spike Lee, excuse me, of Malcolm X when I was in high school. And what I loved about that book by Alex Haley, which I recommend everybody read, it's most people in most people's lives, if you have a long enough life and a life filled with different things, and you're one type of person, some people get a conversion in their life, whether it's a religious conversion or a political conversion or a personal conversion. Some people get one of those. Most people don't get any. Most people are who they are from the time they're little to the time they die. Some people get one major conversion in their life. The unique thing about Malcolm X's story is Malcolm X had two conversions. He had the first conversion from a criminal to a practicing Muslim, and then he had the second conversion after he made his pilgrimage to Mecca. And he realized when he went to Mecca, what he saw, and what Spike Lee's movie does a great job of showing, is what he realized was people from all over the world were Muslims. From his prism in New York, and when he became a Muslim, he just thought it's just black people and there's no other races that are involved and those are the strongest. But when he went to Mecca, he saw people from all over the world, all different colors, making that pilgrimage, and it moved him to have his second conversion. He comes back and his rhetoric changes. He's still for everything he was before, but he realizes that all people can work together to get the change that's been needed. And that's where he comes into more conflict with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for other reasons. Then obviously we know ultimately, unfortunately, he was assassinated. So on One Night in Miami, what I liked about the performance of the actor that plays him here, in contrast to Denzel Washington's performance, is it was since it's more of a snapshot in time as opposed to an entire biopic like Spike Lee's film and Regina King's film. You get a moment in his life and it can be focused. So his performance is more, I don't want to say internal, because what I loved about his performance is it had a great balance of the passion and the belief and the full belief that he had in what he was doing, and especially in the significant tension between him and Sam Cooke, where he's trying to push Sam Cooke to be more socially conscious, or to be socially conscious at all, and challenges him and tells him the reason that he challenges him because he knows that Sam Cooke has the most potential of the four of them, of Jim Brown, even Cassius Clay, and himself, to affect that change, because he's loved all around the country, all around the world, for his beautiful singing. And Malcolm X sees that potential in him, and where he gets fiery in that performance is when he's trying to get Sam Cooke to buy in. And the more introspective parts of his performance are obviously the issues that he's having with his family being threatened. He's being followed because, like I said, this is the time where he's starting to consider the breakaway from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So he's got those internal pressures going on, trying to get Cassius Clay to convert publicly and hopefully help him break away as himself. So it's just that that tension adds a lot to the movie. And again, Regina King making her directorial debut very assured. I love the movie. I thought it was a great movie. It's getting critical acclaim. It will get Oscar nominations. I do believe that the actor that plays Malcolm X will get nominated. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost as sure as that as I am sure that Delroy Lindo in *Defy Bloods*, the Spike Lee film that came out earlier this year, which I've reviewed on a previous episode. See that movie. You must go see that movie. Get it right now. Go to Netflix. Watch it. His performance is one of the best of the year. He will be nominated. I hope he wins. I don't know if he will, but his performance is just fantastic. And like I said, all the actors in this movie do a great job in One Night in Miami. Like I said, the it evokes the '60s Miami. It evokes Cassius Clay, and playing Muhammad Ali is a tough sell too. And they everybody does a good job, and I think it's a good story. It's a good reminder of where we were in that place in history. And like I said, I know it's not a true story. I know it's based on true events, and so obviously, it's something that was fabricated, just kind of what would happen in that scenario. But it's really easy to see how this could have played out that way. So it almost feels like it's a true story. It almost feels like it's something like that, almost like a mini biopic of these four gentlemen at this point in time, at this point in history in America. So it's fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. It is one of the best movies of the year, so I definitely would recommend it. It's playing now on Amazon Prime. Again, that's One Night in Miami, directed by Regina King. So definitely check that out. On my scale of 5 Van Goghs, I'm going to go ahead and give One Night in Miami 4.5 Van Goghs out of 5. So again, Soul, the Pixar film, again, I highly recommend it as well. I'm giving that film 4 Van Goghs out of 5. And then One Night in Miami, directed by Regina King, I'm giving 4.5 Van Goghs out of 5. So again, I'm going to continue to record lives for the podcast. Like I said, this episode, if you're not watching it live now, you'll be able to see it later on Facebook, also on my YouTube channel, which is Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. And then this will be downloaded to the audio podcast feed as well. So if you're listening to it that way traditionally, you can still listen to it that way. Like I said, I'm going to try to do these lives more often. Trying to grow the show. That's always my objective. And I know live presentations people like to watch. And even if you don't, like I said, it'll still be available in the traditional ways it has been. So if you have any comments about my reviews tonight or any reviews I've done, please put them on here. Or if you do it on the podcast feed, especially if you listen on Apple Podcasts, or you're listening to this, please rate and review. It's very important, especially for a small podcast like this. The more ratings and reviews I get, the higher the show will go in search results if people are looking for new podcasts to listen to. So I definitely want to grow the show and have interaction with people, whether it's through live here or even after the fact when they listen to these here. So again, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any suggestions. The email is bendyourpodcast@gmail.com. Again, you can follow on social media. Twitter handle is @BendYourEarPod. That's also the handle for Instagram. If you want to email the show, again, bendyourpodcast@gmail.com. The Facebook page, Let Me Bend Your Ear. So if you could like the page as well, I'll be doing lives from the page once I get more people following there. I'm doing this, like I said, on my regular Facebook page. So if you're watching this, please go over to Let Me Bend Your Ear and like that one. And then if you prefer YouTube, then subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's under Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. So again, anybody that was up late tonight, I hope you enjoyed this particular live. And like I said, this will be on the podcast feed shortly and also on YouTube. Thanks.